when a user of narcotics gets through the detox, the rehab, spends a little time in aftercare, and then runs away. So each case is a different case as to why that happened. So let's try to figure out what we can do to fight that syndrome.
You are listening to the Law Enforcement Pirate Radio Network. Radio Free Larry presiding.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Radio Free Larry.
Well, all right, here we go. So, again, there are various psychological issues that lead people to addiction. There's various psychological issues that addiction creates. And again, it's a vicious cycle. I don't believe it's a craving for the narcotic that causes that to happen. It's something, it's an underlying psychological thing that causes the relapse. And then they go through that other cycle, the addiction cycle at that point. Again, the underlying issue could be, no, I wouldn't say it's the addiction cycle. It's panic of some sort or something like that. So again, that's the ADHD, PTSD, panic attack syndrome. So there was a interview on the Hesher Herring page on Facebook. And I actually wish I had my other app working right. I've been having trouble with it. Maybe I'll try it again soon because we could actually play this video on the screen if it was operating right. But he interviews the individual running it. And again, God focused is good. But what he does is, and he specializes in people that were into certain action sports like surfing, skateboarding. It's similar to like a high achiever. If you don't keep a high achiever interested, they drop out of things at times. Again, that's part of ADHD sometimes and things like that. So he figured his part out, but everybody has to take notice as to what the Rising Tide Ranch is doing to keep people involved. So if somebody is all excited, Vic's there, everything's working, they're staying engaged, and then they get to the aftercare, and I think that's where that woman had the issue because that's what I was looking at there. And there's nothing to keep them engaged in the same way, then that could lead to that dropout. I'm not, again, if you look at some of the videos, if you interview people about the people on the street, they'll tell you things about people on the street that they're around. And again, that has to be in the aftercare. This thing that keeps them engaged and thinks the world of the people around them. Again, it's similar to a high achiever not being interested and dropping out of whatever program they're in. Some kids, very intelligent, but if they're not challenged, they're bored, get in trouble, do other things. So it's the same kind of mechanism. What I expect the government to do, I hope, is that they find some aftercare funding. It just doesn't work without that. If we're spending money on law enforcement and not spending money on detox, rehab, and aftercare, we're just chasing our tail. I mean, it's again one of those stupid equations that people go, well, we should just lock them up, and you don't have. It's more money to just lock them up than it is to actually fix the problem. So when we have these people that push people onto the subway in New York City, you have to find out if narcotics is involved now or before. Are they addicted? Are they just out there? So we should. I'm gonna actually have to look to see if I can find it. But find the program at Rising Tide Ranch, and if you could just send that around so people can look at that. Well, because again, the way that you're fighting it initially is it's an excitement. In some ways, maybe even an adrenaline rush to be with people. It's on the internet, there's money. So whatever it is doesn't trigger. And again, ADHD would be treated somewhat through that. So when we get to the aftercare, the Rising Tide Ranch guy has some ideas. And it doesn't have to be skating. It has to be something, because they need to look forward to something. If there's nothing ahead, then they're going to go backwards. And again, the alarm on my pizza just went off, and that's it's not 100% psychic. Take it with a grain of salt, but that usually means that yes, that's true what I just said. It isn't just my alarm from my oven. It's also different sounds, your computer. I think it's in a Switchfoot song, I think, or something like it. That there's things happening around this that it's more than just fine, or whatever it was line in the song. Then that might be involving other organizations that might want to help somebody. Like, what is she interested in? What could she be interested in? I don't know what her underlying I don't believe she ran for narcotics for the sake of narcotics. She ran from something and ran for something. And you have to make sure they're not being isolated. I have God, so and pretty immense, so it keeps me from falling into maybe that level of addiction. We all have a little bit of addiction. Something's happened in our society, in our world, in the metaphysics around us, in the psychology around us. So to fight that, like, what's his name? I forget his name. Is his name Hesh? What's Hesher Herring's real name? Whatever it is, he stays engaged. I'll get his name here today sometime. But he stays engaged in Fresh Start. You see? That helps him not to not relapse. And again, he's got a family. Well, she didn't have that. She doesn't have what he has. And for whatever reason, she ran from something. And of course, when you're an addicted person and you run, there's something almost surely follows. I'm not sure. I think the federal funding on aftercare is real slim. It's not. If you put somebody in jail and then put them into rehab, it's not the same. It's a whole different world. But I do believe that they should be sentenced to it, and funding should be available for that sentencing. But I don't. You're not going to get it in a jail, because they could. Well, that's what's coming up, is that she got to a certain point and then she fell off the cliff because there was nothing. So Other people have something to look forward to, maybe a family. So, okay, I'm going to have to put some of this together. If there's a video on Pine Ridge Native American reservation, and then they had that alcohol problem. They fixed the alcohol problem pretty much. I don't know what's going. I haven't looked at it in years, but there was a town in Nebraska that was nearby, and all the people that were drinkers in the Native American culture, which you realize is devastating for them, and of course some of them are using opiates probably at this point. So that's probably the problem now. But they would drink, and they interviewed this guy, and I could tell as a psychic that he was a big man, and probably like a chief type. So Satan took him out, and he was drinking. He talks about he lost his family and just a lot of different things going on. But he talks about the people that he's with over in that town, White something, I think it was called, or something like that. And it just that's where his connect is. So when Vic picks them up for the thing, they have a connect. And then that disappears a little bit. And again, you can't. That's why it's probably important to get other people involved. Whatever organizations do, whatever. Here we have skating, surfing. I think it's skating. Skate is what they focus on. But their people are generally skaters, surfers, and there was something else there. I don't know if they said snowboarding or anything like that. But the idea is, if it's stamp collecting, it's stamp collecting. If it's mall walking, she could have a bunch of friends that are mall walkers that are her age. And 4 times a week or 5 times a week, they go out mall walking. It has to be something. So aftercare is the most difficult by the nature of that process. So now you're on your own, but we can't leave them on their own. Because then you have to do what Vic did the other day, and that's go back out. Again, it was a while back. I don't think it's a new video, but I just saw it for the first time. I think he gave her a purple jacket or something like that. So it was when it was cold. So aftercare has to include other organizations that will take an interest in helping people. And again, that guy speaks about God and religion kind of thing. That's not everybody's thing, at least in the beginning, especially. But that's part of it too. But again, the church and other places can be the opposite. If they treat the person poorly, then they're might run for the narcotics. That's the problem with aftercare. Their emotions aren't protected as well. So I don't know if we can find volunteers. I'm sure, and I'm getting different psychic blips. Apparently, some of the people that are donating lost children and spouses to narcotics addiction, and they don't want other people to go through it. You might be able to find people like that. It might be the dog trainer extraordinaire, and they're willing to provide a dog or help teach the person dog training and provide dogs for that person to train in a club organization or in a professional organization. I was in a dog training club, Schutzen, which is tracking, obedience, and protection. And actually, when I was going to get a federal government job, because I had a family, I had to get some insurance, and things like that. Medical insurance, healthcare. I was offered a job by a world-class dog handler and, pretty good breeder. He hadn't quite got to the world-class breeder yet. He was trying to get there, but he was a groomer. And he said, look, I'll hire you. I didn't even ask him how much. He may have given me some crazy amount. He was very wealthy. He lived in it's that area in Montgomery. I think it's Montgomeryville. Big houses everywhere. He had a big stone house and a pool, huge pool, and he had like acres upon acres in this area. It's like Fort Washington, but it's the most expensive area around Fort Washington, I think. But I said, I got a family. I had to get insurance and I have to be killed by the Marshal Service one day. So I have to move along. His wife was one of the first. She may have been the first person to come up with the temp. She may have been the originator of temp nurse. She was in early, but she may have been the originator of it. Temporary nurses in the early 90s, at least, probably earlier, probably in the 80s. She probably started it in the late 80s, right? Mid to late 80s. Jim's son. What was Jim's name? I can't. I was totally asleep and everything. So he's like, "Why don't you come and work for me?" And he probably would have took me on as like a protege kind of thing. I guess if I'm using the right term. So the idea is to get people in like that. You might have groomers out there that the dog groomers that will say, "Hey, I'll I can teach her this." Instead of going to school or something, I mean, you can get them in school, whatever it is you can do. Because based upon what we're seeing as far as aftercare runaways, it's based upon more than, it's not necessarily the treatment, it's the flow of the whole thing. So all of a sudden everything's gone. Another example is who was it? Was that guy? There was a guy they used to bring up on Officer Survival, and he was a great looking guy, and he had a Harley, and he was a cop. He was like, you look at the photo of him, he's your poster police officer, I guess 1980s or 90s when he was shot. And it's something I keep telling people: don't do your paperwork. You should do your paperwork, and they should have an enclosed garage that you can pull into if you're not going to go back to the station. And you look at, have a camera bank that you can look around at things if they want you to stay out there while you do paperwork. But he was doing his paperwork. And the guy he wrote a ticket to earlier in the day showed up. But by the time he looked up, he was looking at a shotgun. And he went, tore his face off. But he said, when I was in the, when we were going to convict this guy, when we were in the case, I had something to live for. I'm going to get this guy. I'm going to put him in jail. Put him in prison. And he said once the case was over, everything was gone, and that's when the trouble began. So I think we're seeing something similar in the recovery of addicted people. Whereas when they get to aftercare, there's just kind of, some of them have nothing there. So we need to provide that something. We need to find people that volunteer to provide that something. And there's a lot of people that have a sad story about a relative or a friend that, either drove off the side of the road or, overdosed or whatever it is, and they might be willing to help. So it would be like an aftercare, I don't know, I wouldn't say hobby, because in some of these cases, it may lead to a job. And then, right, you have some people that get jobs and they stay engaged with their job. So again, they call that gainfully employed. At least they did in the military. Or not the military, actually military and government. And because, when you have to start all over again, it's an effort that we wish we wouldn't have to do, because then somebody else could maybe be there. And it's okay. It's okay. We have to learn how to treat people that have had things happen in their life. I know for a fact that there are people that will re-addict people, that will addict people, that will cause people to be homeless using high-level technology. If you witness a major crime, you could be, without knowing, become the victim of a narco, of a sex trafficker, of a dirty cop, or all the above. And next thing you know, you're on the street addicted because that they want to discredit you. So that's my actually it's God's assessment. I think it just came floating in earlier. So because I had the question, I did have the question as to what happened there, and I don't know what caused her, what in her psychology caused her to be a runaway from aftercare. But I know for sure that there are certain people who don't run away from what I'm seeing, and there's something in their life that's different. You can't let the excitement of being sober die in their lives by just, them being a castaway, they're off by themselves. There's nothing going on. They're going to head to the street. So based upon what I'm receiving, that there are people that donate that have lost, they have money and they lost family members or family members or friends or both. That there are probably people out there that would say that they would take the time to help keep people sober based upon maybe, like I said, teaching them dog grooming, teaching them martial arts, go mall walking with them as part of the club, because they don't know how to get there. So we need people to come in and pull them out of the room into mall walking. Now, obviously, I stay engaged in this, and this helps, block what they want from my life versus, what I can manifest after decades of psychological torture in reality. Stay peaceful, praise God, and all that you do, praise God.
You are listening to the Law Enforcement Pirate Radio Network. Radio Free Larry presiding.
You can run, but you can hide.
Radio Free Larry.
So you can run, but you can't hide from Vic. Stay peaceful, praise God, and all that you do.